Well, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Critscast, the Team Fortress 2 thing. My name is Aggro, and we are live. I say live with a gentle person with whom you must surely be familiar by now. I am, of course, referring to the Owldites. Beautiful, slightly less hairy than probably the last time you saw him. Sideshow. Welcome to the show, Sideshow. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you, Aggro. I am a lot less hairy than the last time that most people will have seen me. It's unfortunate, but I feel like it's a lot better than getting rid of my eyebrows, which is what happened earlier last year. I seem to incur some kind of hair-based brutality, yeah, every year.
Oh, having had or been through the trauma of losing at least one eyebrow, no, actually, technically just one eyebrow at least one time, I can say that it's a blessing to not have to go through that again.
Yeah, how did you lose a single eyebrow?
I got very drunk on my birthday and at university, and I woke up the next day without one eyebrow, I want to say. And then exactly the same thing happened to me about 2 years later. Same group of friends. They were very coy about it. I mean, there was about 5 of them, and no one person was willing to point to another person. So, I mean, friends have got to stick together. And I couldn't I couldn't really blame any one of them, since multiple ones of them were clearly involved.
I think at that point you have to just take a slice of eyebrow from each of them, the equivalent amount of hair from each person. That's a fitting punishment.
I could see that working. I must admit,
like biblical levels of revenge.
Remind me not to do anything to you in the future. It sounds like you've got it all planned out. Genius. So, welcome back to Team Fortress 2 for the first time in what I'm assuming is going to be a long time by now.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. I used to enjoy playing some pugs every now and then. The issue is that if you try and jump into it, pugs take so long to be able to get going, because the matchmaking system, you know, if you want to play on like some kind of third-party matchmaking site, is just nowhere near as fast as anything else. You know, compared to other games that are out there. So
it's okay.
Plus,
we can name other games. It's fine. We're allowed.
Yeah. Well, I just mean basically every other game. There wasn't even a specific one that comes to mind, but almost all of the games have inbuilt matchmaking features for their competitive modes, which is unfortunate that TF2 never really got around to making a great one. But yeah, and then also the last time that I tried to play Pug Me, people just DDoSed the servers while I was streaming it, so it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So it has been quite a while.
Well, I'm playing. We're deliberately playing right now on the creators.tf servers for 2 reasons. One is you actually tend to get good games here. Like, people show up and they put their A game into this. So yeah. I love a good sort of try-hard session. And because they've kind of got certain amount of protection on their servers. I don't want to like say this and then get the server DDoSed. But I've been told that they're relatively anti-DDoSable. Is that a thing?
There you go. You're throwing out challenges into the void. It's always dangerous.
I really am. I don't know why I'm saying these things. A stupid idea. Hopefully it pans out. Server is slowly getting more popular, so hopefully get a full game of people here as opposed to just you and I MGEing. That wouldn't go well for me. I know it has been a while since you played a decent match, but I'm relatively certain that I couldn't light a candle in your general direction. So,
it certainly has been a while. I played a couple of games against some of the Overwatch guys recently. Earlier, I want to say it was sometime last year, but I can't exactly remember when. I challenged Mangachu to some MGE games, and so we hopped on an MGE server and played some, and then did the same with. I challenged Super, but he's a coward. He won't step up to me.
Heard it here first, folks. Oh, there we go. I knew I was gonna struggle. There we go. First time dying to the rockets of Sideshow. Doesn't feel great. So do you still talk to the old TF2 crew?
Sometimes. So, for example, I was talking to Cadus quite recently because we're both. I mean, Valorant has just released,
Yep.
and it's a huge new game with esports aspirations. And I think a lot of people that maybe like missed out or didn't invest very heavily in the Overwatch wave are now looking at that and seeing whether they can do the same there. Because TF2 is amazing, but no game is gonna kind of capture your attention if you have aspirations for making a career out of it. Like a game that doesn't have large amounts of money in it is not going to keep you forever, even if you really enjoyed the game. So I think Cadus is now coaching Absolute. I think they're called Absolute Legends Blue, and I've seen that Salentes and Hafikul are playing on that team as well. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then also there's a bunch of people who used to play TF2 that are now in Overwatch and in Overwatch League, and I chat to them fairly frequently.
So you haven't completely like cut ties with anyone. I mean, there's got to be an assumption that you're. You didn't do the classic kind of I'm done with this game, screw you guys, TF2 shit. Which is
no. I mean, I really enjoyed the game. I loved it. Sunk so many hours into playing it, and also running tournaments and casting and all sorts of different stuff. I really enjoyed my time in TF2, and the people in it as well. It's just that people naturally move on from any kind of thing. I went to one of the recent LAN tournaments. I can't remember exactly which one it would be now.
It can't have been anything recently because there hasn't been anything.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't recent at all, but it was just before I moved out to the US to do the Overwatch League. So I think it must have been I-58, I think it was. And I'm sad to say that I didn't recognize a lot of the people that were there, because I think that a lot of the people that I came up as I was coming up in the scene, they were kind of the veterans. They'd already disappeared. Some of my contemporaries had also disappeared, and the newer players I was less familiar with. So I think it's just the classic progression of a community that new people come around a lot, which is a lovely thing, but it means that there's a lot of unfamiliar faces if I do poke my head back in now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a buffer as well, not just for people leaving and going to play other games, but like the sense that there is no natural transition between being top of the game as a player and then transitioning onto something that also keeps you as part of the game, as in going to casting or going to producing. Like, it happens. It can happen a lot, but it's not like it's you don't go from the role of being number one soldier into being a trainer for TF2. That's a role that doesn't really exist in TF2. I mean, there's certainly not enough money to justify making a career of it. Or anything of it, really. So, yeah, I mean, is it the same way? I'm going to be asking you a lot of stuff about Overwatch. I hope that's okay with you. I mean, I figured that
of course.
Probably is, because it's what your
That's
bread and
my
butter
job.
is. How weird is it to say that that's your job? Like,
I mean, it doesn't feel weird now because I've been working on it for 3 years, but it certainly would have done at the beginning, yeah.
But not necessarily that your job is a particular game, but like your job is you're making enough money or sufficient money doing what you're doing right now to justify not like fulfilling whatever you were doing at university.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's kind of wonderful that esports has got to that point, and I'm very lucky in that the time in which I decided to invest a shit ton of time into esports was the time at which it became viable to have it as a career.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I work with who were investing an enormous amount of time into gaming, 10, maybe even 15 years before I started, and for them, it's only starting to pay off at the same level as it is for me, just because I happened to get into it at the perfect time. And that wasn't because I'm a genius. That's just because that's when I happened to be interested in esports and in making it a career. So
I mean,
there's a little bit of timing and fortuitous stuff in all of this.
I distinctly remember you having like a real life outside of TF2 as well, outside of like gaming.
A small amount of a real life. Yeah, I was at medical school while I was doing the esports stuff. I was working with Team Fortress TV, running the European side of it, whilst at university doing my medical training. But that ended up not working out, and I was never a big fan of it anyway. And I mean, one of the reasons that it didn't work out is because I invested so much time into the esports stuff in the first place. But yeah, it ended up not being a path that made sense. So it's a good job that I had invested so much time into the esports stuff, and it just happened to work out.
I remember talking to Seagull last week about Comedian, who was a European caster around about the vanilla TV days, and he did a similar job in as much as his first go of the university round. He spent all that time casting, and it didn't work out that you can do both at the same time. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew that casting would be such a time sink?
It really is. It's a ridiculous time sink, and even just playing generally was a horrific time sink. I look back at my my profile and the fact that I have, I don't know, like I think I must be close to like 9,000 hours or something, which I know these many years later, that doesn't seem like an outrageous amount for some people.
Only 9,000.
Yeah, exactly. But when you convert that to actual time played over the course of the years, it was just a ridiculous amount of time invested, and a lot of that was casting instead of playing.
Yeah.
But that's still just a huge amount of time. So I am very fortunate that it ended up paying off and wasn't just a total waste of time.
Well, I mean, was there an expectation at the time that it would be something that could pay off, or did you just literally waste time?
Well, it's a good question, because I think it's very easy to post-rationalize time invested in something when it works out.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say to yourself, "Oh, I always knew that it would work out." I definitely didn't at the beginning. So like all of the time that I spent from 2012 up until, or maybe like 2011 until 2014, basically all the time when I was just playing fairly seriously, I had no aspirations of doing anything with it. But then when I was casting, there was a feeling that even if it didn't pay off, and TF2 didn't go anywhere, and the casting didn't go anywhere, that at least I was developing applicable skills for use in other areas. So at that time, I was also looking for paid jobs, writing articles for other esports as well, like I was for Team Fortress TV, but this time for like bigger organizations, maybe like for some esports organizations or other news places that were offering paid stuff at that point in time.
Yeah, I remember reading about boning up on Sideshow, a phrase I didn't think I'd say this year. But that you were an esports writer. That you
I did a small amount of it. Yeah, the thing is, when I think again, I was just very lucky with the timing, because the point at which I tried to get into those kind of things, I don't know. It's very weird, Agro. Let me take it from the beginning. So, I was doing so much voluntary work.
Are we getting the story of Josh?
Yeah, here we go. I'll give you a little bit of a story.
When Josh was a young warthog. It's okay.
I have always found that my aroma lacked a certain appeal.
Ooh, excellent.
When I was doing so much work for TFTV anyway, just voluntary work, that when I started applying as a writer for some organizations that were actually paying, they were rejecting me because I was overqualified, because I'd already done way more than their normal people would. So the rest of the esports scene was finding ways to monetize itself better than the TF2 scene was, despite the fact that TF2 was putting out more effort. just because there were way more viewers for these other esports. So, for example, like CS:GO and Dota and this kind of stuff. If you were able to write an article for them, you would get much larger viewership, despite the fact that nobody really cared about the article.
Yeah.
So yeah, it ended up being a really weird situation where I tried to do a bit of writing for a while, but because I was just applying for a lot of jobs, the writing ended up not really going anywhere because the casting got there quicker. But yeah, I think that it was great to have been in a position with Team Fortress TV where I could do so many different things because I had built up enough experience in doing those things that I was able to apply for like 5 different jobs and had the necessary experience for all of them, just because it was born out of necessity for TFTV.
Yeah, I think that's true. At least true now as it ever was in the past. That there's sorry, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but Quizcast has gone from being just a podcast to being a lot more. We do all of the things now. And with certain degrees of capabilities. We're always looking for talent, always looking for people who are capable of writing, or people who are capable of talking, or pressing buttons, or whatever, making pretty pictures. And if you happen to have more than one capability, it makes you doubly or triply sought after. To put it in like minor terms, having someone who can commentate is great. If they can color, or if they can analyze, or if they can do all the other things, then it just like adds to the appeal of them. Is that something that you found within like the Overwatch stuff you're doing at the moment? I've noticed you've been listed as analyst and commentator on various events.
Yeah, definitely. So I went from being a desk analyst to I now do live commentary. And I mean, I always did live commentary in the past for TF2 as well. So it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with. But I've also written articles and what else have I done as well? Streaming as well. Like basically and podcasts and interviews as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more skills that you can develop, the more useful you are to organizations and the more revenue that you can pull in. So I think that I would always massively value the ability and like skills that you can develop. If you can develop skills, you will eventually find somebody to pay for them, I think.
Nice. I mean, that's a happy and nice thing to say. There's a certain degree of desperation that isn't worth discounting in TF2. And I think that's a fairly safe way of saying that, since I've had conversations recently with potential sponsors and effectively said, we'll do anything!
Yeah.
Please just give us recognition, we'll work for a mouse mat. But it's less so in games like Overwatch, where there's actually money there and there's capabilities of individuals from all sorts of walks of life. Are you... how would someone who isn't sort of interested in working for a kind of a backwater community like TF2, I'm going to get such hate for saying that, like how would you break into casting now if you had to start from scratch?
You wouldn't start with an established game, I think is the point. Like most of the people that you know as community figures within whatever game in esports you want to pick, almost none of them started halfway into that esports career or lifetime. You have to really come up with the game, I think, right, unless you have prior experience. If you really are like a brand new figure to a scene, then you have to rise with it. Which is why I think that Valorant is so appealing at the moment to a lot of people, both in terms of being a coach or a player or whatever, is because whenever a new game is released, you start on an even playing field with everybody else. Like it's the same even if you think about kind of TF2 casting. If all of the people who ever did TF2 castings had stayed around because they were being paid for it, then it would be hard for new people to break into the scene, because you're not just trying to get good, you're trying to also get better than all of those people who've been around for so much longer than you have. So it's just it's a factor of time as well. So if, for example, you have a big passion for CS:GO and you've listened to a lot of CS:GO casting and played CS many times before in the past, and that was a scene that you wanted to get into, Valorant is the perfect option because you are not competing with casters who've already made their name and have that kind of brand value. You're also not competing with color casters and analysts who know a lot about the game and the history of all of the teams, because everyone's starting right at the beginning. You can outwork anybody you choose. If you are really dedicated to it, you can watch more games than anybody else. You can make more notes than anybody else. You can learn it, and that's really what you need to do. But it requires that kind of same starting level playing field for everybody. And so if you're really committed to getting into a job as on-camera talent, then find a new game. It doesn't have to be Valorant. I'm just using that as an example because it's so nascent. But you could find any game that you think will have an active esports scene and try and get in on the ground floor. And yes, I'm sure that Valorant will pick up former Riot casters and CS:GO casters and whatever, but they'll also have some community figures, because in any game, the community figures, the ones that grow with that community, tend to be the most passionate about it and the most knowledgeable about it, because they've just put in more time than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask. You did seem to be mentioning like Valorant a lot, and I did actually technically have to look up what nascent meant, but there we go. But, I mean, you brought it up a lot, and Seagull mentioned it last week, and there's going to be a whole bunch of conversations about Valorant. You've made a mark in Overwatch. Are you looking for other roles in other games?
No, not at the moment, because Overwatch is going really well. I'm enjoying my time there, and I've just started being a caster there as well. So for the last 2 years, in 2018 and 2019, I was working on the desk, and I feel like I enjoyed the desk a lot, did really well there, worked very well with all of the producers, yeah, I kind of accomplished what I wanted to accomplish on the desk. And we worked a couple of World Cups and stuff like that. And now I want to try and do that same kind of thing, but for casting. And I think that I've still got some time left doing that for sure. And Overwatch doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. We were supposed to be doing the homestands this year, and unfortunately COVID kind of bit that in the butt. So I'm looking forward to getting back next year and actually doing what we were always supposed to do with the Overwatch League, which is going out and casting games in front of local audiences, which that was supposed to be what happened this year, and we did a little bit of it, but unfortunately a global pandemic kind of shut us down, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
So no, I'm still planning to just kind of accomplish what I have left to accomplish in Overwatch.
Like the COVID thing is pretty dramatic for a lot of people, and I'm glad we started this stream by confirming that we're all still alive. I'm glad you've managed to make it through, but the game itself has not been so fortunate, and the league itself hasn't been so fortunate. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, we're also in an incredibly fortunate position, though, of being able to take on the games at all. I mean, I'm sure some of your viewers, just as some of my stream viewers and this kind of stuff, have found it that they've been furloughed or their jobs have kind of disappeared because of the COVID situation. Now, thankfully, I'm still getting paid. The league is still ongoing. The matches are still out there. So there's not really that much to complain about when you put it in the perspective of other people's experiences during COVID. It's just that the kind of core vision of what this year was supposed to be ended up being changed.
Use the word followed, and again, I'm probably going to have to look that up. But the actual events, the leagues, they've been postponed as opposed to cancelled. Were you like mid-season? Is it?
Yeah, we were about. You're testing me now. I think we were like 9 weeks in, and right. I'm not sure how many weeks there overall are. But they got postponed for a while. They got put off, and then we ended up playing the games online. So they are still going on, and they have been going on for a while now. They just the matches aren't like previously. They would have been happening in big stadiums in the cities themselves, and now they're all occurring online, which makes a big difference to the kind of feel of everything. There's no live crowd to react to and play off. The games don't seem as important, and the matches can't happen as the matches between the North American teams and the Asian teams can't really happen at all because of the ping difference. Whereas obviously that's not a problem if you're flying people out to middle grounds.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was wanting to talk to you about sort of like the I want to call it a LAN experience, but it's not. It's certainly not. It's not what I would recognise as being I'm being dominated by someone.
Sure.
This is really bad. But the matches that happen with Overwatch are all the players together in the same space, so technically a LAN.
Yeah,
with
I
a
mean
live
technically
audience.
a LAN. But I think what the TF2 community thinks of as a LAN is a community feel, right? It's like you all taking your PC and hooking it up and chilling with your mates. Whereas this is it's very different. It doesn't have any of that community feel. It's a yeah, it's a professional tournament. The PCs are given to the players by Blizzard, and everyone makes sure that they've only got the exact software on them that is required, and they're sat at the front of a stage, and the rest of the people there are viewers in like concert halls and stuff like that with thousands of people watching them. So yeah, it's a very different experience to those LANs that we're thinking of in TF2, but it is a LAN environment.
I mean, I can say that Copenhagen Games is a much more similar experience to that one, but I mean, again, the difference is that all of the teams are there for the entire thing. And they go for a weekend and sleep in hotels,
Sure.
and then at the end it's all done. Is there a similar thing in Overwatch at all, where you have dozens of teams in the same environment, in the same space for durations?
Well, there would be in previous years. In previous years, everybody lived in Los Angeles. It's not like everyone was in a hotel or whatever, but they all had houses in LA, and they were all playing their games at the same arena. So that's somewhat similar. It's like a LAN event that never stops, I suppose. But it's more. I mean, it just becomes your life at that point, right? It's not like a big extended LAN where everyone's drinking all the time. But this year, the idea was that the homestands is what they're called, but basically they're like weekend events, but not all of the teams go to them. So you have kind of like 5 teams that end up going over to the to a central location. So for example, we went to Washington DC a bunch of times, and the 5 teams would go to Washington, and then 5 different teams would end up going to like Philadelphia or Boston or something. And that has a little bit of the same kind of feel.
Really trying to focus on the game.
Yeah, that's the issue with playing TF2 at the same time.
Yeah.
Your words disappear.
That's right. Well, they go on for a little bit longer than they're really supposed to. I was listening. List. Dead now. Fine. Pay attention again. Do you miss, like, certainly the LAN scene for TF2?
Yeah, I think there's something definitely to be said about the community feel of going and just... It's not even just hanging out with your friends, because that was amazing in the last few years here for Overwatch, because you were hanging out with all of the players and all of the casters and all of the production staff all the time. So that was a wonderful community feel. Yeah. But there's something, I think, special about when I remember back to the TF2 days of playing with people from all around the world, but particularly all around Europe, because I was playing in TF2 at the time, and then having one opportunity per year to meet them. That's different. That's something. Yeah. There's something special about that, where it's you don't have the opportunity to see them very often, so you really relish the time that you have available with them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that I think provides a community feeling that isn't really there in any esport anymore that's larger. It's something that only really makes sense for smaller scenes. And I suppose that it would be there if you were part of like a community. Like if you're part of, like if Critscast had a community in CSGO or in Overwatch or something, you would play casually with all of those people, and then you would meet up at some community event. But the more professional my career has become, the less community it has had involved in it. And yeah, that's definitely something that I miss. The first few years of TF2 the first lands that I went to were insanely special memories for me. Just wonderful times.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely true of my experience of LAN and hanging out with the TF2 friends. It's as you say, it is the one of the smaller benefits of having just an entirely focused group of gamers. But I mean, it's not like you've lost the community entirely either. You and Bren are, I guess, twins from different parents.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been amazing to be able to carry on the work with Bren in Overwatch from TF2.
Carry Bren.
Yeah, true. Also true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he'd appreciate that explanation either. Yeah.
It is very good, but I think that's less of like a community atmosphere and just like being very close knit with friends, and it becomes kind of the casting talent, the very close knit group of friends. But even like, for example, I stream a lot now, and I've been able to build up my stream because the Overwatch as a game is very popular, gets a lot of viewers on Twitch, and so I've been able to build up a following on Twitch as well. And that in itself is its own little community. But there's something very different about being the focal point of a community compared to just another person. You know, if I go to an event now and I'm just surrounded by my stream viewers, that's nice, but it's not the same atmosphere as when you were just, you know, another guy in the crowd. It's very different. It's not as fun. It's more of a performance, I suppose. You know,
yeah.
they're not really close friends that you play with every day like I would have in the past with the UK buddies that I used to go to Insomnia with. It's more like they're fans, you know. So it changes the dynamic a lot.
Do you find yourself getting like recognized at events now?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Whenever I go to an event, they're there for the casting and for the games. So, absolutely, yeah. Everyone, whenever you go to an Overwatch event, for sure, then people recognize me. Yeah, it can be a problem when I play games online as well, because even when I've been playing Valorant recently, which has no particular reason for me to be recognized because I haven't done anything within the Valorant scene, but I get people just recently shouting egg at me because I've gone bald. So yeah,
wow.
people know, people recognize.
I mean, you've been bored for like a few hours.
Yeah, it's a couple of days. I've already had a couple of egg comments when I've been playing some Valorant casually.
Wow. That's an observant group of people. I mean,
yeah.
What sort of cash or caveat does the name Sideshow carry now?
Oh, God, I think it has the same kind of impact that it always did, of just somebody dreadful at video games. You don't want him on your team.
Says dominating my team.
Yes, yeah. I've managed to retain some of my knowledge of TF2.
For the leaderboard, playing sniper though, so not sure. At least you're not playing spy.
True. I used to play spy in Highlander actually, and when I say used to, I mean I have ever done that. But
it happened.
Yeah, it happened once. But I used to have such abominable ping that I would play with like 400 ping, lagging out all over the place, and I'd be backstabbing people like from the front. It was wonderful times, actually. Those are some of my favorite memories about TF2, just the game just being so janky that you're able to pull off ridiculous stuff.
I was listening to a stream, I can't remember how recent it was, but you were saying that you used to have problems with lag and reality.
Yes, yeah, I did. From I can't remember why my internet was so bad, but it used to be just abhorrently awful. It was just dreadful. And so whenever I used to play TF2, I would always not quite know when I had gone around a corner. And it had effects for me in real life. Like, I used to worry that I would lag in real life. And, like, if I crossed the road, I would be, like, wondering whether or not I'd successfully actually crossed the road.
Whether
It
the
was
world engine had recognised you as having crossed, or whether it still think you're on the other side.
exactly.
Yeah. Do you ever have that problem with yourself, kind of almost like first-person shooter fever, where you're walking along, or you find yourself in a shopping centre and you think this would make a great map, and you, you almost kind of feel yourself rocket jumping, or
Yeah,
trying to transverse.
I've had situations. I've been playing so much Valorant recently. It's really hooked me as a game, and I found myself kind of not crosshair placement, but like checking corners. I found myself checking corners
Looking
in
for
real
sight
life.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, which is
Nice.
worrying. At that point, you have to step off the gas a little bit. You know,
I was
you
going to
have
say,
to
I mean,
take a step back.
that's kind of the whole North American fever, isn't it? Surely that you're exposed to the possibility of an entirely different lifestyle that includes guns.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, that's been a weird thing to come to terms with actually since moving to America, is just realizing that things are a lot less safe than they are in the UK. And I know that might sound quite like alarmist or just unrealistic, but I tended to operate in the UK as if there was no danger anywhere. Because I think for I've got like and especially for somebody who's in the privileged position of being a man in his 20s and also being a white man in his 20s, that I don't have to be as worried when I walk around places. It's not, it's nice. It's unfortunate that other people have to experience fear when they do go around areas, but yeah, for me, I was never that bothered going around in the UK. And then in the US, I do have this general feeling of being a little unsafe when I'm in certain areas of Los Angeles, for example, and other areas of different cities as well.
When
And I think part of that is just like
the
no, not even that. It's just the fact that there's guns around.
Oh, really?
It really
Okay,
does just make a large difference to my my thinking about it, and also just the other people telling me repeatedly that there is more danger, because it would be very easy to just discount the opinions of Americans, but they've lived here, so I should really take their opinions into account.
Value local knowledge.
So yeah, just a slightly larger sense of the real world being able to hurt you.
The possibility of danger becomes much more real. I know walking around one of the Rewind events in Los Angeles and walking around kind of some of the areas, I think I went to a really rough part of town. Like that, my Uber driver was very surprised to be dropping me there. And I think I only asked to go there because I'd heard it in a song, and almost immediately regretted it. But like it was a feeling of being in the wrong place, just 100% out of place from anything that I had previously experienced or could expect to experience. And possibly I was overreacting, but yeah, absolutely, I did not feel entirely within my own.
It's not that I've ever been unsafe, but it's always something you have to keep in mind, especially if you're working in events that are in stadiums and stuff, and the US does have a gun problem, especially with people that like to shoot up large stadium events. It's always something that's got to be there, kind of in the back of your mind.
I hadn't even considered that. I mean, that's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it's not really like it's not something that gets constantly thought about. It's just something you have to be a little more conscious of. Is just the reality of the situation is like, oh right, yeah, we do have to have some kind of plan if there is an active shooting, because it's not like those are incredibly rare. They do crop up from time to time, which is horrific.
I mean, working in an office once a year, we'd have a fire drill, and everyone would put their work down and quietly walk out of the building and go and stand in a quiet part of town until we were told it was safe to go back in. Do you guys do fire drills, or or gunman drills.
Yeah, they have just like an emergency alarm, right, which is used for the fire, but I'm sure it would be used for other stuff if it was if there was some kind of danger. We actually had a fire drill interrupt our World Cup event at
Oh wow.
BlizzCon. So we were casting, and in the middle of casting the group stages of the World Cup, we had the fire alarm went off, and it was just a drill,
Yeah.
but it was a drill that they thought it was necessary to have people act as if it was
Real.
absolutely
Yeah.
real. Yeah. And so they interrupted us in the middle of the tournament. So yeah, there's some VODs out there where halfway through our casting, we just say, "Oh, well, there's a fire drill. We got to
Yeah.
leave."
We'll see you all later. I mean
Yeah.
that's kind of mad, but it makes sense, and it would be terrifying. I think more so if you had decided to ignore it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't ignore that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a question about whether you could have done that during rehearsal day instead of when the actual thing was live. But sure, yeah. Once an alarm like that actually goes off, you do have to pay it attention.
You got to teach everyone else as well. You can't be the one person who sat at a desk saying, "Well, kids ignore fire alarms," because that's the wrong message to be sending. I mean, are you conscious of your audience? Are you conscious of who might be listening and what you might do or have to do?
Especially while streaming. Yeah, I think that when I stream on Twitch, I have been more and more conscious that the audience is quite a bit younger than I feel like normally when you broadcast, I don't know whether this is just me, but as you tend to envision the audience as being roughly similar to yourself. And I feel like most people would do this, no matter what their background was or what age they were or whatever. You just tend to think of other people as being roughly analogous to yourself.
Yeah.
And so what I've realized more and more is that actually the audience is quite a bit younger than me. I'm starting to get old in esports now, which sounds ridiculous, but I've only just turned 26. But a lot of the audience is like average age, kind of in their very early 20s, on my Twitch stream anyway. And so I have to bear in mind as well that there are some younger viewers where you wouldn't want to be, I don't know, talking about certain things, or you have to assume that they haven't learned certain life lessons. And so it's important to kind of make sure that they understand that some dumb story about what you did once was a one-off, and you don't always act like that, and you don't think it's appropriate for people to act like that. There's things that you have to keep in mind.
Are there guidelines though? I mean, are there actual policies that you have read that have been written down that need to be followed? Else you're for it, Sonny? Or
no, not really. I mean, it's mostly common sense. It's obviously it would be a very bad idea to like promote or instigate violence, for example, using that platform. But it's mostly stuff that I would be just morally on the hook to follow anyway. I mean, I think that would most of the rules are designed just to keep everyone towards some moral guidelines, and as long as you're just sensible with your platform, then you're not gonna get into trouble because you're doing the right things by your viewers anyway, and the people that your viewers could interact with.
Damn that scout. And I contributed not at all to its death. Yeah, I mean what you say makes sense. I'm not certain, like, the Team Fortress 2 version of you would entirely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's the other thing as well. It's like the amount of the maturation is really quite large, and I think that's a combination of just actually growing older. Like when I was in TF2, I was I think I started playing when I was 15, maybe 16, and I mean now I'm 26. We're talking 10 years later. So naturally, people do go through a level of just evolving their own mental state. Frontal lobe continues to develop, and you realize that your previous actions were pretty shitty at times. But also, it's the result of just having to work in a more professional atmosphere, and also having to reflect on the fact that what you do and what you say is remembered and noticed and taken as indicative of how you think and how you want others to behave and think.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh, many. I mean, who doesn't have regrets? Tons. But yeah, nothing that I haven't learned from, I think. Although at that point there wouldn't be regrets, they'd just be like future regrets, right? So, but yeah, I think that the really important thing is to be able to take a look back at what you did in the past and realize that you shouldn't act like that in the future. Like, that's the whole point of maturing as a person. So, and I think that as long as you are making meaningful change to become better, that's also an okay place to be at. If you're continuing to improve, and the point at which you're currently at is not dreadful, and your rate of improvement isn't dreadful, then you're in a fairly decent position. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure, or there's not a lot of pressure, but there's more pressure on public-facing personas to be kind of good examples, or at least not bad examples. Like,
Right.
you don't have to be a moral saint, but you should at least not be an example of immoral behavior to your audience. So I think that's just something that you have to be more and more aware of, and that kind of guides your thinking a lot. Because a lot of the time, when there's no accountability for behavior, and I think we see this a lot in online gaming communities, particularly when there's no accountability for what you do or what you say, then people will say much shittier things. I mean, this has just been proven in study after study in the social sciences, right? Like, there's incredible studies that we used to go through as medical students, where if you have somebody in a large amount of distress, but you're not specifically told to help them, a lot of people will just not help them. They'll just assume that other people are going to help them.
Yeah.
And just bystander apathy is what it's called. Like, you don't care as much because you're not directly involved in the situation. So it's about like trying to break those behaviors. And I think that always having the impression that you're being watched is a very good thing for breaking poor behaviors. And so that's like part of being a public-facing persona, is that you always feel like you're being watched. So it's a positive thing for breaking poorer behaviors that you just had because there was no previous accountability for them.
It's weird you're talking about this. I kind of wasn't going to mention the whole BLM riots that are happening, but it seems like
that definitely ties in.
Yeah, and the message is certainly applicable there as well. It's have you been directly or otherwise affected by the things that are happening in the wider like North American world, or are you insulated to a certain degree?
Well, like I said previously, I mean, I'm a white dude in his 20s, so I wouldn't say that I'm directly affected by the issues.
No, sure,
but
sure.
I think that it's really important to stand up for it, because it's not just because I'm a public-facing figure, but because it's just an abhorrent situation at the moment in the US, both in terms of the systemic racism and in terms of the police militarization and brutality. So yeah, we did a charity stream recently, myself and David Pay, another guy in the Overwatch scene, where we were raising money for the NAACP. And yeah, I think that that's one of the situations where it's not enough to just avoid being a bad example. You have to actively be a good example, because you've got a platform and an opportunity to help enact some form of genuine change, which it would be, I think it would be immoral at that point not to use that kind of platform for good.
Is that the one where you raised like, 120% of what you're looking for. It's like $1,000 or something. Or
Yeah. We set our goal for 10 grand and we ended up raising 23. So it was pretty huge. And that's why I'm bald now as well.
yeah, I think I paid you 50 quid to lick your fingers, but
Is that when I had cream all over them? Shaving cream?
Shaving cream, yeah. You didn't go through with it, but I thought, well,
I didn't lick my fingers, aggro. I'm not. I would have. That's something that TF2 Sideshow would have done.
Yeah.
But currently, Overwatch Sideshow has a girlfriend who insisted that there might have been some toxic chemicals in the shaving cream, and so.
And yet
there are other people that care about my health more than I care about my health.
And yet, Chooi's still a thing.
Yeah, I know. There's some level of logical dissonance there. It doesn't really make sense.
For those uninitiated, I can't imagine there's anyone out there who doesn't know what a shoey is.
Yeah, a shoey is. I think it's originally an Australian. I wanted to use the word tradition, but I think that makes it sound too grand. It's just a dumb thing.
I have never heard of it outside of you talking about it. I've never heard of a shoey.
I've definitely heard of it, and I've heard of it from Aussies, so I assumed it was an Australian thing. But you know, maybe it's not a thing. I think it is though. Basically, it's you're taking a drink out of a shoe. You take your beer or whatever you're drinking, and you put it in a shoe, and you drink it out of a shoe. It's a shoey. I don't know why it would have ever developed, but
I'm so certain it's not a thing. I'm so certain it's a Sideshow thing. You're kind of foisting it off on the Australians as this random
I didn't
culture.
invent it.
Oh, I so want to say you did.
I'm sure I heard of it from somebody else. There's no chance.
I just can't imagine if it's entirely a Sideshow thing. Why would that be a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea.
Any other Sideshowisms that the world needs to know about?
I don't think I've invented anything other than the shoey. I mean, there are many other things that you could do. You could do a socky or a hattie. You can drink out of any kind of.
I guess you'd have to be a little bit quicker if you're going to do a socky.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point you just pour it in and you let it dribble out the bottom.
A clean socky. A clean socky will be okay. It's just going to be a little bit sort of soapy.
You filter it through the sock.
With the sock, yeah.
Seems reasonable to me.
You had no other way of filtering, and beer was your only available route.
Fruit?
Fruit, yeah. Let's go with fruit.
Is beer a fruit?
It is now.
That sounds like, that's like UK people in response to the 5 a day kind of thing.
5 beers a day.
Yeah, don't worry, I've had my 5 a day.
I'm going to cut down if I make it 5 beers a day, but you know it'd be worth it. Good for you. Taking mid. Be quiet out here. Here comes trouble. Spoke too soon. But the girlfriend's a new thing. I wasn't aware of that. That was is that new, or have I just been outside of the life of Sideshow for too long?
I think just outside of the life of Sideshow. We've been together for just over a year at this point. So yeah, but that adds another layer to the attachment to America as well, right?
She's North American then.
Yes, yeah. She's from LA, so or at least lives in LA. So the yeah, it's interesting. It's because my time in the US is tied to my occupation, and that's legally tied to the visa. So it adds another layer of complexity on top of it, because you have to think about where you want to live for the rest of your life and what jobs allow you to live in certain places. And as you start to get older, all of that needs to be factored in.
It's not like you've only just moved there. You've been there for what,
3 years now. This is the 3rd year. So
okay.
I moved here in January 2018, and it's now June 2020. So yeah, this will be the 3rd year. So yeah, I've been here for quite a while. I always feel like it hasn't really been that long, but yeah, at the end of 3 years, it's been a while. I definitely I'm getting more used to it, but I still don't feel like it's home here, really. because there's just so many things that you just take for granted when you live in a country. Like, for example, you know what shops sell what.
Yeah.
Like, you know where to go if you want a certain thing. I still have no idea where to go. Like, if I want to buy, I'm trying to think of like a random. Yeah, I would know where to buy tea bags. I know where to buy like general grocery stuff, but it's the
plasters.
weirder stuff, like screws, for example.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't know what the default place is to buy screws. I do now because I recently had to go and buy a bunch of
There's no
home
Bunnings.
Improvement stuff.
Bunnings?
Yeah, but
Australian one?
I don't know.
Home Depot?
I always think of B&Q.
B&Q,
B&Q's
yeah,
the
yeah.
classic
I was there.
UK one.
I was there yesterday. I bought
Wix.
myself a chopping board and 4 furniture feet, so I can make a
Yeah.
monitor stand. That is the extent of my my COVID-related lifestyle at the moment. But yeah,
Sounds
so
thrilling.
yeah, it really is. I'm so proud with my monitor stand. There are no words to describe how elated I am at my my DIY capabilities.
Yeah.
It just proves to me how expert a human being I am.
Absolutely. There's nothing better for your self-esteem than a bit of DIY.
Than making a thing.
Yeah.
I had to use one of those drills as well, so I had to charge it up.
One of
it got
those.
to
Oh, right.
You know,
Yeah,
electric
yeah.
cordless drill. You know,
Yeah.
I know this is supposed to be like a conversation with you about you, but I'm so happy with making a thing. Like,
Yeah.
I can't help.
There's something fantastic about it.
It is.
It's. Yeah. I wish I had more time to do more stuff, honestly.
I was gonna say, when was the last time you made a thing?
Don't know. That's a really good question. When was it? I mean, when I was in the UK for Christmas this year,
Right.
I brought my girlfriend over, and my parents are really into making stuff, especially my mum. She's crazy for all of that kind of stuff. Loves anything creative. So, one of the things that she's recently got into is silver jewelry making, and so we made a ring from just the base silver jewelry, and the process is actually fairly simple but very satisfying because you're hammering it out in order to make it flat, and you have to attach the two ends together to form a ring, obviously, with some silver solder, and the whole process is wonderful. I've also I made something out of wood recently as well, but I can't exactly remember what it was. Yeah, I miss doing a lot of hands-on stuff. A lot of my creation is like video creation, which is nice, and you still have some sense of satisfaction.
It's
but
still
it's
a
not
win.
quite the same. Yeah, it's not quite the same as just getting hands-on with things.
I mean, I got to admit, I thought I was the man for screwing 4 feet to a wooden board, but there you are. You've created a ring from nothing more than a loop of metal.
Yep, it's pretty entertaining. It's pretty impressive. It's very nice to see the product of your creation.
My mate Zagkiel in chat linking me to the Chooi on Wikipedia.
Ah, yeah. I'm sure that Chooi is a thing. What's the origin of it then?
Fad in Australia. No!
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Did you edit Wikipedia before you came on tonight?
Nope. I had no idea that we were going to be talking about Choi's.
You must have guessed. You must have done. All right. Well, I don't know. Thanks, Zagkiel, I guess, for proving me wrong. Siding with our potentially. Are you going to go for like the green card thing? Are you going to go for like living in America and doing that as a becoming an American?
I've no idea. I've no idea. I mean, I think that it seems likely because a lot of the esports work opportunities are in America, but who knows what the future has.
I know, not saying where you described that again did seem like maybe Overwatch isn't going to be the only game you ever play in your life.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most esports titles don't last forever, and people don't last forever inside of them. So, I mean, if I want to continue to work until retirement, then it seems unlikely that Overwatch is going to be the game forever. So you always have to be flexible when you're working within the esports industry and think about what new titles are coming up, and expanding your revenue streams as well. Like, for example, adding more streaming and more podcasting into it as well. We've been creating our own podcast network and doing a lot of Twitch streaming on the side as well, to the point where it makes up an insignificant, not insignificant portion of my income.
Sure.
So yeah.
I mean, have you tried? Have you got any desires or hopes to cast in other games? Have you done a bit of CS on the side, or have you tried maybe doing Broad Brothers? No, Broad Brothers. Always get that wrong.
No, I haven't at the moment because I'm working with the Overwatch League. But I have plans to do my own kind of video content, analysis videos, this kind of stuff, just like YouTube and Twitch stuff for Valorant, because I'm enjoying it a lot at the moment.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's always open as a opportunity in the future. But I think at the moment Overwatch is just
too much.
Doing very well for me. Yeah, it's not like it's taking up too much time, but it's just like it's the best opportunity. We don't know what esports plans are going to be available for Valorant in the future, and the Overwatch League is really entertaining. I'm enjoying it a lot, and I'm kind of at a place where I think other people are enjoying my work within the community as well. So it's a good place to be.
Absolutely. Well, I think while I'm hanging on to my last 11 dots of health. No, that didn't last too long. Okay, while I'm dead, I did mention this. We were going to be doing a thing, Player of the Week.
Yes.
So you've had almost a whole hour to think of who it is that is going to be your Player of the Week Sideshow. So what do you got for me?
Okay, now Player of the Week implies that it's something temporaneous. It implies that it's something to do with the moment, the time, the now. But I'm going to go back in time. I don't know who's the player this week, but I know who my Player of the Week in terms of the history of TF2 has been. And it's somebody that inspired me to pick up casting and work in the esports scene, basically. And somebody that taught me a lot when I first started as well. And it's Admirable. Admirable is a legend. I've tried to copy him by becoming an egg myself. And I absolutely wouldn't be where I am right now without him, because he's somebody that taught me a lot in terms of just the basic casting, and was super happy to bring me into the fold. But also he was involved in a lot of organization behind the scenes in Team Fortress TV and taught me just some best practices about that kind of stuff. And was always someone that I looked up to and enjoyed working alongside, and I think kind of crafted the beginnings of my journey into working in esports.
You know what? I have no problem with that call at all. Let me play the music anyway. Congratulations, Admirable. You are this week's Player of the Week.
Woo, yeah! Start the freaking party!
Wow. I'm so glad you put thought into it and came up with a name that makes sense.
There you go.
And like Admirable. Do you know what? I've always struggled with this name. Admirable is an admirable
I'm not sure how
person.
you're supposed to. Yeah, I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. Actually, I think it's either admirable or admirable. But I have said
either
both.
Either way,
times.
it's a genius name. It's like one of those things that you can't get wrong, because even in getting it wrong, it's not like it's deplorable as his name or anything.
Nope.
No regrets about being called Sideshow?
No, but I do have regrets about my Twitter and YouTube names. I made them before I really thought about professionalizing it, and so my Twitter handle being Sideshow Gaming is just the most generic, vague thing in the world.
I mean, it's not too bad. It definitely could be worse.
It certainly could be worse. I could be XXX Sniper Lord XXX, and I apologize. I apologize to whoever that actually is, because that's somebody out there.
Also, almost certainly someone on Twitter. Tempted to look it up now.
And my YouTube channel is Sideshow 1994, which makes me sound like a kid who made a Hotmail account when they were 12. But I have regrets about those names, but not really about the name itself.
Well, I can tell you right now, XXX Sniper Lord XXX does not currently exist on Twitter.
Well, it's available for
it is
for anyone who wants it.
It is available right now, and if you do go for that Twitter name, then forever will it be recorded in YouTube history.
Yep.
And in fact, you could probably make some sort of sound bite from it, and just forever be remembered as the moment that the name was stolen, chosen for all prosperity. Words are falling from my mouth as if I was thinking about them, but really I'm not.
That's the best way to speak, I find.
You actually use some words that while I joke about having to look them up, they do tax me. Are you clever?
No, Aggro, I'm not clever. I think what it is I've been around Americans for too long. These American words.
Oh right, I was going to say. I mean,
Some of them, like for low, I think is a particularly American thing. It just means to give someone it's where they take you kind of firing them, but the job is available when it comes back.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like in COVID, the work itself has stopped, and so they don't have a job until the work itself comes back.
Right. Okay.
But I think it's like a specifically American definition for some reason. I think the UK people call it something different, but I have no idea what the UK people call it. At least I've never heard of the word until coming to America.
Which was also a great film. So there is with Eddie Murphy back in the day. That's how old I am. I don't know how long we've got you for, Sideshow. I'm very conscious of the fact that we specifically grabbed this time of the day.
Yes, I have another max half hour. Well, another max 20 minutes, actually.
I was going to say, that's max half hour. I could fill a half an hour. 20 minutes makes me feel like I'm teasing the audience to say that you're going to be here, though. Perhaps I should think of maybe grabbing a couple of questions and asking you some stuff. What do you miss about TF2?
Ooh, I think that the thing that I miss is that community atmosphere. I think that's the biggest thing. I also will say that I miss being anywhere decent at a video game. That's another big one. Because I've never been able to invest the time in another game to get good at it whatsoever. And TF2 having its small player population and me investing abnormal amounts of time into it was a kind of a perfect storm that allowed me to be fairly decent. But mainly it's that community feel to it. It's nice to not be the focus. It's nice to just be another person meeting their friends at an event.
Yeah. Yeah, I've no idea what that's like. Yeah, forever the person who's just sort of lurking in the background. I'm sure one day I'll be famous, but it's not going to happen in this lifetime.
It is very nice, Aggro. Enjoy it. It's lovely. It's as much. It makes me sound like I'm not appreciating my position or something. But when you're at an event and there's a couple hundred people that over the course of the 2 days want to speak to you, but they don't really know what they want to say to you. They just want to say hello.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I mean, I enjoy it, but I'm naturally quite this might sound stupid, but I'm naturally quite an introverted person. I don't really
Right.
I wouldn't naturally go up to people and be like, "Oh, hello," and start conversations. That's not me.
Right.
Even though, you know, I enjoy being an on-camera presence and making people laugh and stuff like that, I'm not chatty. I'm not small talky. And so that takes a lot of effort for me to be at events and be like small talky with people all the time. And I do miss the times in TF2 where we just go and get really, really drunk with a bunch of friends and watch some games.
Is there anyone you miss that you would have wanted to take over to Overwatch with you? But
Oh, so many people, Aggro. So many people. Like, I enjoyed hanging out with all of the weird people that I came up with in TF2. Like the people that I played with in the Premiership division, people like Permzilla and Kos and Solentes and all of those guys, and then People like Cadus, I think, who could have easily become a coach and gone into that kind of thing, but never did. And then Admirable and the other people that we used to cast alongside as well. I personally, I just feel lucky that I managed to drag Bren with me, because at least then there was one person.
Does Bren feel lucky that he got dragged over?
Oh, who knows? I think he curses the day he met me.
Genius. Yeah, going back to that sort of celebrity thing for a moment. What is the weirdest body part that you've signed?
People ask me to sign their foreheads a lot because I have a big forehead.
But
And
surely that would mean they're walking around the rest of the day with just.
Oh yeah, they walk around for the rest of the day with Sideshow written on their forehead. Yep, I've signed maybe 5 to 10 people's foreheads, which might not sound like a lot, but that's a weird request, so it feels like a lot to me.
They all stick out in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have a podcast called The Foreheads with 4 of us with big foreheads.
Ah, genius.
There's a bit more of a tie-in than just a weird body part, but yeah.
Right. I feel that since we're ended that round, I'm just going to favourite the server quickly and close things off with you. Before I let you go, how do people follow you, do things? What's the link for your podcast?
Well, you can you can get all of the updates about what I'm doing if you follow me on Twitter at Sideshow Gaming. You can I regularly live stream on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/sideshow. And the podcast that I'm involved with are I run a podcast called Plat Chat with my other Overwatch League commentators, and we go through all things that are happening in the Overwatch League, and we've just started branching out into Valorant as well. So if you're interested in that game, I would highly recommend our Clutch or Kick, which is the name of our Valorant podcast.
Clutch or Kick.
And we also have a comedy gaming podcast called The Foreheads, which you can also find on YouTube. And that about sums it up. That's most of the stuff that I'm involved in.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being here, Sideshow. It's been really good. I was a little bit hesitant, like maybe things weren't going to go well with this stream, but I had nothing to worry about. You're really genuinely awesome person. Thank you very much,
Aggro. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you to everyone who has watched this or enjoyed this. Please do the thumbs up thing. I don't know, it's YouTube, so leave comments. Who knows what the SEO for this is. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day if it's early in the morning for you, or the rest of your evening if it's late at night. Or if you're catching this sort of about midday, enjoy your lunch. If you're catching it just before you go to bed, have a lovely sleep. Take care, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Good night.